I think I'm supposed to read, there's a little message from Anna that's saying it's being recorded. I'm supposed to read this little statement, so here we go. In accordance with Governor Baker's executive order permitting virtual meetings during the COVID pandemic, the Cemetery Committee is conducting this public meeting today, November the 4th, 2020 at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Zoom platform in accordance with the town's policy directive and guidelines issued on April 1, 2020 and amended on May 7th. This meeting has been properly noticed with the town clerk. I ask that all Cemetery Committee members, town staff, and presenters activate their video and mute their microphone unless they have something to say or are participating in dialogue. For members of the public, when I open the meeting to public comment, please unmute yourself or raise your hand by hitting *9 on your phone or select raise your hand option by your name in the list of participants. If you are recognized, please state your name and address. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on the town's website. I hereby call this meeting to order. All committee votes will be taken via roll call. We'll start with an attendance roll call of committee members. When I announce your name, please reply present or something along those lines. I'll start with myself. Paul Cook, present. Andrea Solomon.
Present.
Jerry Susi.
Present.
Leo Carroll.
Something along those lines.
Okay, and Brian Davidson.
Present.
All right, and I see that Aaron McCloskey is here. And of course, Tish Hopkins is here. Susan Bates is here. And Justine has joined us. Justine, what's your last name?
Sorry, Justine St. John.
St. John, Justine St. John. Very good. All right, so next order of business is to mention our next proposed cemetery committee meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, December the 2nd, 2020. Is that a date that's agreeable to everyone? Everyone's nodding yes. Okay, so it looks like December the 2nd will be our next cemetery committee meeting, 4 p.m. Eastern Time on that day. My chair comments, D1. I just want to thank Aaron and Tish the town could not have two better, more hardworking and dedicated people looking after the cemetery than Aaron and Tish. And I just want to acknowledge that and thank both of you for your labors on behalf of the committee. And now I would like to turn to D2, the Public Works staff report with Aaron McCloskey. Aaron, take it away.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to start by introducing Justine St. John. She is the new administrative assistant for the Highway and Grounds Division of Concord Public Works, and she will be taking over the duties of taking minutes for this meeting moving forward, and will be attending meetings, cemetery committee meetings from now every month moving forward as well. So welcome, Justine.
Welcome.
Thank you.
The statistics for the month of October, we had 11 internments and 19 lot sales during the month of October. And we are trending just about average right now for this time total so far for the year, upwards of about 45 for the year, averaging about 40 internments at this time in the fiscal year, and lot sales are up as well. Total of about 58 lot sales, and the average for this time of the last 4 years was about 23. So cemetery's making some money, which is more than average this time. Einstein's contract, I talked about that last meeting. That was awarded, the landscaping contract was awarded to Einstein's. That contract has been fully executed by the town manager. The PO is cleared, so they are on board for another year with the cemetery. When we advertise this contract, this is a 1-year contract with 2 optional 1-year renewals at the town's discretion with a price escalator attached to those. So we look forward to having them back working with us for another year. They have finished the final mowing for the 2020 fall season, and all of the decorations have been picked up by Tish, the cemetery supervisor. We did a notification in the local paper and on the town website that those would be picked up a couple weeks back and held for a week at Tish's office if family members wish to pick any up any decorations. And we will be starting with the fall cleanup, the annual fall cleanup here very soon in the month of November. We already had one snow. The goal is to get up all the leaves and the debris before we get some heavy snow. So that'll be planned here in the next couple of weeks. Working schedule. Tish is working out the schedule with the contractor. And that's kind of really all I had. We did, and in the last, I guess, the meeting, we had discussed some budgeting items with Brian, and I had sent him an updated report earlier today that I received yesterday from one of our management analysts here in public works. So Brian, if you have any questions after reviewing that, want to schedule some time to meet, I'm glad to meet with you to go over that. I will include the management analyst as that's his forte. He can speak to it better than I can. So, but reach out, let me know if you'd like to meet, and I'll schedule that. And I will, I'll talk about some of the priority items in the upcoming agenda items. But I don't know if Tish has anything she'd like to add.
No calls. We didn't get any calls about picking up anything though, just informationally. I think everybody who wants to know has gotten onto the news and notices thing, so that works well.
Yeah, I'm glad that that whole sort of system of alerting all the folks who sign up is working. That's great.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, Aaron, thank you very much. So we move on to item D3, lot transfer Goldman. Go ahead.
That lot transfer has actually been withdrawn.
Oh, okay. All right. We'll just scratch that out. And we'll go on to D4, update on the committee's priority projects, our 3 projects. First is the mausoleum lot project. And I'd like to let Aaron tell us a little bit about the review. He's been working on finalizing our rules and regulations for the mausoleums.
So after last month's meeting, there was some recommendation to add a couple of specific items from the committee that we discussed. And so those were added in item number 1 and further down in item 7. Other than that, no changes to the document. So those were really addressing the hours that construction could be done on a mausoleum, and that they would need to avoid any funerals that were taking place, and essentially that cemetery supervisor or superintendent could modify those working hours, as well as we addressed some issues with the type of structure as it relates to the historical characteristics of the structure and fitting in with the design, if you will, of Sleepy Hollow Cemetery were the 2 main points that were brought up by the committee as wanting to be included.
Right. Has everyone had a chance to look? I think I'll just review the 2 things that Aaron added for you. And Aaron, tell me if I don't get it right. In the first, number 1, it says around the 3rd sentence, the committee, cemetery committee reserves the right to approve or reject the design because of size, material, configuration, historical characteristics, or method of construction. So that sentence was put in to give us a kind of catch-all backstop in case there's anything that catches our eye that needs to be dealt with that hasn't been in some way covered by other parts of these rules and regulations. So that's a sort of a all-purpose insurance line that gives the committee a second chance to say, wait a second, regarding the matter of some design or issue to do with a new mausoleum. And then the other thing which was added because of comments of the committee is over on in fact, I think the whole number 7, is that right, was added, Aaron? The 7th one. All work must be completed during the hours of 7 to 1700, Monday to Friday only. In other words, these are the hours you can work on building or doing something with a new mausoleum. It leaves the weekends, it leaves the cemetery quiet. excluding all state holidays. No work will be allowed to take place during a funeral in any surrounding area cemetery. So that's just another a little bit of a backstop insurance to make sure that the sort of the cemetery environment is protected from during time of construction. Because it's obviously if someone wants to build a mausoleum there, that's a big building project and it will take up some time and make some noise. So we want to sort of protect the cemetery a little bit by a sentence like that. Otherwise, I think the rules remain the same. And if you've all seen them, I would like to move that we accept these, we vote to accept these rules and regulations, and then we can move on to the next issue, which is setting some prices and then putting them up for sale.
Paul, could I just add, when I was reviewing the rules, just one thing that popped to mind. I noticed that, we're getting a key, but do we need any kind of language where it gives us the right to entry into the mausoleum? Or are there other rules or areas that would give us the right to go in if perhaps there was a problem with inside, or for whatever reason the cemetery folks needed to get inside? Should there be a rule of a right to entry?
Is that by some, I can't remember off the top of my head last time I read the whole thing through. Is there something already in there along that line or not?
So I didn't see it. I see there's there's discussion that we need to have a key, that the key needs to be provided. But I was wondering if perhaps in that section or in the general
Section
rule.
is it? Which section is it, Brian, where it says that?
Yeah, so I think the key is section 5, second paragraph. It says 1 key to each lock must be deposited in the cemetery office to remain permanently in the custody of the cemetery. But it doesn't necessarily, I didn't know if we should add specific language to give us the right to entry.
Wait, I mean, we could add, I think if we were to add anything, maybe we elaborate on number 6 under general rules, where it talks about access to the mausoleum must be done under the supervision of the cemetery supervisor.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to put that, Aaron.
Should have,
Is that, all right, well, that seems like a good suggestion, Brian. So why don't you run by the language that you had in mind? Maybe a sentence you could put at the end. What would you put?
I would just say that, the cemetery, the cemetery supervisor retains the right to enter all mausoleums, for the purpose of inspection and
Maintenance.
inspection, maintenance, and to ensure that these rules are being enforced. So,
Tish, has anybody ever from the cemetery administration gone into the Pope tomb?
No.
Is there any clause that you know about? I mean, so no one's ever needed to go into it, so it wasn't necessary to have a language regarding it, I guess.
No, somebody broke the window once, but we called the family because we don't have a key. So we called the family and told them about it anyway. If we had to go in there for some reason, we'd be telling the family if there was an issue.
We don't even have a key to the Pope tomb?
No.
All right.
There weren't any rules for that mausoleum when it was put there in the 30s.
Okay. Well, we've just recorded the language. It's on a recording, and I believe that Brian suggested. Does Brian, let's run over that one more time if you can remember what.
The cemetery staff retains the right to entry all mausoleums for inspections, maintenance, and assurances of rule compliance. How's that?
Okay, is that pass muster with the committee? I see Andrea Solomon nodding yes. I see Leo Carroll also nodding yes, and I am nodding yes. We'll ask Jerry when he gets back from getting another bowl of ice cream from the refrigerator.
And that would be attached to number 6 of the general rules.
Okay, that's the second set of numbers in the rules and regs. So let me ask this so that we don't delay. Providing with the proviso that language will be added to number 6 of general rules. Are there any further objections or comments regarding the content of these rules and regulations?
So sorry, the only other thing is number 5 has 2 paragraphs. Did you guys want to make that a separate number, or did you want the 5 to have the 2 paragraphs? Because all other ones are kind of numbered. So I wasn't sure, should there be under design and construction, if you're looking at it, should it be 9 items? So item 5 looks like it has 2 paragraphs that aren't necessarily exactly interchangeable or related to each other. So I didn't know if
I have no objection to renumbering them. That's fine. That would, we can do that. Anybody else have any problem with that? So then we'll make that second paragraph of number 5 into number 6.
yes.
And then all the others will add up to 7. We'll just change them to 7, 8, 9. That is, 6 will become 7, 7 will become the new 8, and 8 will become the new 9. Which is very nice because it's symmetrical. The 2 groups each have 9 points. All right. Any other comments, questions about the rules and regs that we're finalizing here today? We've been fiddling with these for a couple of years. I think we just about got where we want to be. So I'd like to move that we vote to accept these rules and regulations as dated October 26, 2020, with the proviso that we include the 2 changes we've made today. That is the insertion of the language about access and the renumbering of part 1 of the rules and regs. Would someone like to second the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Andrea Solomon seconds the motion. Let's take a vote. All in favor of accepting these rules and regulations with the language that we have added today and the renumbering. Andrea Solomon? Votes
Aye.
yay, aye. Leo Carroll?
Aye.
Leo Carroll votes aye. Brian Davidson?
Aye.
Paul Cook votes aye. And we're waiting for Jerry Susi to return. Jerry, are you there? All right, well, we have 4 votes and 1 absentee. I think that passes it. Jerry, you're back. Jerry, we wanted to know what your vote is on accepting the rules and regulations.
So sorry, I apologize. That was an emergency, urgent. But anyway, I vote yes, aye.
All right, Jerry
Accept.
Susi votes aye. It's unanimous. These rules and regulations have been accepted. Now let's go on to the second part of our discussion of the mausoleum lots today, which is to do with lot pricing information and the plan to have a hearing regarding the pricing in December. And I'd like to turn this over to Aaron, who has done some studying along, as well as Tish on the matter.
Yes, thank you, Paul. So Tish has reached out to a few different cemeteries, and I know there's some discussion in the past that Tish and Andrea had worked on collecting some information on some pricing. And what we found is no other public municipally owned cemeteries have the mausoleums that we could find and get prices for. So the pricing that we got was from 3 private cemeteries, and one of them was a Catholic cemetery that had mausoleum lots. The prices ranged from the Catholic cemetery lot. What we had found was they were charging just for the cost of the 12 graves, 12 lots that the mausoleum would actually, the space that it actually would take up the footprint. And the other 3 were, between 200,000 and $1 million for mausoleum lots. So Newton Cemetery, they started 200,000. The Jamaica Plains, Forest Hill Cemetery, prices were 260,000 to $1 million, and then the Mount Auburn was a private cemetery, and they haven't sold one in over 25 years because of they don't want to lose that much space. They want to kind of conserve space, is what they had told Tish. So, but he had estimated around $500,000 for a mausoleum. So, I think the a number that it was mentioned by the committee in the past was somewhere around $200,000 was the thinking. So that, that falls in line with what we're seeing here at the other places. The one outlier was the Catholic cemetery that, was just charging for the space of the 12 grave lots. And if you looked at that, what that takes up for us based on our prices, that's, it's the $26,400 range. So that would be the other alternative, but I don't think the committee was far off from the thinking in meetings past and past discussions. So.
Yeah. So if we were to make it competitive, regarding when we talked before, Aaron, you mentioned the unique character of it, though we are a public cemetery.
Yeah, the Sleepy Hollow is a public cemetery, but it's a unique cemetery. It's very, very historical. It's a destination, right? It gets a lot of visitors annually. They're coming to visit the cemetery, and I think whereas the committee is only proposing 3 mausoleum lots, that is very valuable real estate, if you will. It's a very small section of the cemetery. There's only 3 of them. There's not a lot of lots available. These lots are prime real estate. And I don't think a higher price point for these is would be outrageous. In compared to the other ones, the other numbers that we're seeing, it's not really a high price point if you're looking at other mausoleums in the region. Kind of falls in line.
And Aaron, what about the perpetual care aspect costs?
So we had looked at, and that's what we I think heard. Bring up my notes. Tish, what they say about a third, one third of the
typically about
cost
a
of the
third.
lot was what they were charging for perpetual care.
Right. So
On top of the actual cost, right? So
and that would go into a fund to make interest to pay for whatever necessary maintenance.
yeah. So you're looking at $66,000 on a $200,000 lot that would go to the future maintenance, the care, anything that's needed. And then obviously, if you're looking at the location, there's going to be quite a bit of construction that's involved with those 3 mausoleum lots. Should somebody purchase one and construct not only the material, of the lot of the structure itself, but where they're building it into the hill, there's going to be a lot of engineering that's going to need to be done in order for us to get a plan that we would approve of. So,
yeah, the thing that got this whole ball rolling was, gosh, 5 years ago, maybe 6. Citizen of Concord, Mr. Farb, came to us with what was Mr. Farb's architect's name? Do you remember, Andrea?
Jeff Adams.
It was Jeff Adams, yeah.
Yeah, Jeff Adams, who was a distinguished citizen of Concord, had come up with an architectural design, and the whole thing was presented to the committee, a beautiful drawing with all the information, and they were really ready to buy a cemetery, a mausoleum plot, but we didn't have any means to sell them one. We hadn't had a discussion of it. We hadn't didn't know how we were going to survey that hillside. Nothing, and so it has been. We've been working on getting up to a point where we could do what we're doing today for about 5 or 6 years. So now we have rules and regs, and now we've got some potential idea about pricing. I think what next thing we want to do is talk about those prices and then have a rate hearing potentially at our simultaneous with our December committee meeting. And from that point, go ahead and put the, once we've done that and everything works out all right, we could put up those 3 plots for sale, which would bring in, I think, some substantial income to help with the cemetery, doing things like restoring headstones and other projects. And we've got all the rules and regs to govern the construction and maintenance and of those mausoleums. So I think we've come a long way. Let's see if anyone has anything to say about the pricing that Tish and Aaron are telling us about. Tish, you said that you told Aaron that the Newton Cemetery sells lots for about $200,000 a piece.
We started about 2. They don't get very specific when they're talking to us about their pricing, but it's based on location.
Yeah, so they have a
Views.
variety of places they can. Forest Hills and Jamaica Plain, Aaron told me they were around 260,000.
Start at 260 and they go to $1 million. And again, that's based on location.
Right. And then finally, there's Mount Auburn, which hasn't sold one 25 or 30 years. But if they were to sell one, it would be around $500,000.
That was his best guess.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Tish, thank you very much for taking the time to call these cemeteries and getting this information. It's much appreciated. So why don't we open it up? Does anybody have anything to say about potentially pricing for these 3 lots that we're hoping to put on sale by the end of the year?
Paul, if I may, I was real quick to unmute my mic. But just to underscore Aaron's point, earlier this year when we were talking about another matter, I did come across a number of lists highlighting notable cemeteries throughout the United States. And, Sleepy Hollow, Concord is consistently on those lists. So again, the comparison is more like, we're more like Mount Auburn Cemetery than any of the others that you've looked at. So I would just say, keeping that in mind with pricing, and also keeping in mind, location, the neighborhood. I mean, there's the Pope tomb, which is an interesting feature, but what else is around the corner? Is the Melvin Memorial. So it's really an incredible location.
Yes, I think well said, Jerry. Yeah. Andrea, Brian, Leo, anything?
Yeah, I mean, I just, echo everybody's comment. I mean, I think we're undervaluing significantly if we're at 200,000. I think, these are once in an opportunity times to purchase this in these locations. I think, this is the cemetery's one probably best option to really generate a lot of money, and I think with real estate, right? I mean, nobody starts low, we all start high and then lower prices if people are rejecting it. And I don't know, even at $1 million, doing a lot of fundraising here around Concord, and, it's out of my imagination, but for a lot of these people, that's really nothing. I mean, I think even at $1 million, you're going to have a lot of potential takers for some of our citizens. So, I mean, I would just recommend that we, if that's within the market price of $1 million, I'm much closer to the $1 million mark than I am to 250,000 mark. So.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you. Well, I said we have had, first, Tish said no one had ever approached her about this for many, many years, since she'd begun working in the cemetery, which is a long time ago. I won't say how many years ago, Tish, but it was a long time ago. And then Mr. Farb shows up 5 or 6 years ago, and he's hot to trot. He wants to buy a plot. We just don't have one to sell him. And he's a very successful entrepreneur. And I presume that if we had something ready, he would have purchased it. I don't know if he's still interested. I think we should probably write him a letter once we've made it, finished all our business. But I appreciate what you and Jerry have had to say, Brian. Andrea or Leo, anything else?
I would agree with that assessment that these are really, it's very valuable real estate, and there's not much of it. So I think we should, ask as much as we think we could get for it.
Sure.
There's only 3 plots that will be available. So.
Yeah.
I mean, in that section, which
Yeah.
is probably a very desirable section, so.
Yeah. Well, we have talked a little bit about, in fact, Tish has had a request, though I think it's moot, for a plot in the new section for a mausoleum. Is that correct, Tish?
It was correct, yeah, but he since has died.
Yeah. I presume there will be future possibilities of someone wanting to buy one. Though the pricing, I think, will obviously, because of the location, will not be the same as it is in the old section, which is what we're talking about right now. Leo, do you have anything you want to add to what Andrea and Brian and Jerry have said?
Well, I suspect I'm not going to be a buyer in this, so I'm not, I don't have much to add to this conversation.
We are custodians for a brief time of this property. We are not potential buyers of plots like that, though, of course, it's a free country. But we are responsible to do the best we can as citizens of Concord to take care of the cemetery, and that includes what we're doing right now. So
Yeah, well, I would just say that, I agree that it makes more sense to stay high rather than start off low. And when you look at some of these houses that are built in town, there's no limit to what people seem to be able to spend on. And when you're dealing with your ego in perpetuity, then, $1 million is nothing to some people.
okay, all right. We sound like we're talking in the spirit of Henry David Thoreau around here right now.
Well, whatever.
All right, so I'm not an auctioneer, but so what do I hear? Do I hear 500,000? I mean, what are we going to talk about?
I guess the question is, how much do we need? What are we expecting to get out of this?
Well, my sense is right now we're spending about 10, 12,000 a year doing headstone restoration, and we could probably spend twice that easily. I think we also talked about, we kicked that around about a reforestation project for the cemetery. And I'm kind of interested in a sort of, I had it written down here somewhere, here it is, a long-term turf improvement plan involving loam and fertilizer, liming, reseeding, developing a kind of a prioritized plan of tree care. It wouldn't hurt to pour, $100,000 into that. So there's plenty of room. I don't know how much we need, but our income is not low from selling grave lots. We also want to build a columbarium, which will cost something up front. So I don't know. I agree with, I think I agree with what the committee members have said. In terms of how much we need, well, I think $1 million might be a little high. It just sounds awfully big. But I think I agree with what Jerry and Brian and Andrea and Leo said. The 200 sounds a little low.
I think you go to 999 then. I'll assure you there are people who will buy these and they will think they're getting a bargain, which is inconceivable to us. I know as a government worker, it's inconceivable to me, but they will think it's a bargain at 999. And so I wouldn't be afraid to go right to that top limit. And,
all right. Well,
and we have time, right? What's the worst thing? We sit on them for a year or two and, or people come to Tish and, if there's 3 or 4 people who say, oh, that's outrageous, so I'm never going to pay that, then, we can revisit it. But
all right. Okay. So
million.
Brian is thinking boldly. Do anyone want to add to that or make a comment to that?
I guess what Brian said, it doesn't hurt to try it and see where it gets us. I mean, we can always revisit it. But it is like much higher than I would have anticipated at first, but it might be worth it.
Leo, you want to add to that? Thank you, Andrea.
Well, it seems high to me, but if you think you can get it, I mean, do we know how much the guy that was looking for one thought he'd want to spend on one?
We didn't, but he was also made a sweetener. He said whatever whatever it would cost to grade that area for drainage, he was willing to pay. He was willing to be quite generous. I don't think any figures were mentioned, but I had a feeling that Mr. Farb and Jeff Adams, I think, first of all, I think Mr. Adams' fee for designing that was not small. It was a beautiful job. So I don't think that, I think they were ready to spend a significant amount if we'd been ready to tell them how much.
Yeah, but here's the conundrum. So we can repair some stones and do some groundwork and stuff like that, but it seems to me that we're reaching to the very, very top without really a need to go that high. Why go that high if we can't even spend the money? Or we just, I don't want to get into this dangerous thing where you have to, you have to dream up jobs to spend what's in the budget. That's not a good situation to find ourselves in. So it seems to me that $999,000 for plotting the ground is an awful lot, and we don't really need it.
I would say that there's we didn't get to it lately, but there's the job of redoing the stone wall along Bedford Street, which is going to cost more than $1 million. And there's also the job of the wall that's on the other part, the old cemetery next to the Catholic Church, that big wall there. I think there's probably town money, Concord Preservation Act money for that. There may be you can also borrow money for that, but it would be nice for the cemetery to put a lot of it up front from our own funds as well. So those are two very pricey projects that are, I would say, in the next 5 or 10 years, the cemetery is probably going to want to address. So it's not that we would have to dream up uses for the money. Anyway, Leo, that's sort of how I see it.
Yeah.
And I'd say
Yeah.
there's projects we don't even think of, I mean, if you have $1 million in the bank account, I mean, that's going to be something that 15, 20 years from now, people may be able to draw upon that interest to do repairs that we can't even, comprehend right now. But that's just my 2 cents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Brian, because I mean, we already have like some issues that we can see will get worse of erosion, or maybe trees that need to be taken down, not now, but in 15 years. And it's not like you have to spend that money immediately. You can even, you can probably use a lot of the interest off of it just to do annual projects like we're doing, and then have that there for those big projects that need to be taken care of that the town may not be able to provide for in the future.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask Tish and Aaron if they have anything they would like to share regarding this. Tish says nothing. Aaron, you don't want to fool around with this hot potato, huh?
I'll leave
All
it
right.
to the committee.
Paul,
Yes, Gary.
just quickly, I guess, in looking at decisions, oftentimes I think, what's the worst that can happen if this is a very wrong decision, if a particular figure is wrong, if it's too high. I think the worst that can happen is someone laughs in our face, and we kind of adjust accordingly.
Yeah.
So that's how I'll look at it.
Good, Jerry. Well, I think there's going to be a rate hearing, and afterwards we'll put these things up for sale. And it would be a good time to encourage our friends over at the Concord Journal to cover it. And I think, what's the name of the report of the woman who's written a couple things for us already, Tish?
Betsy Levinson.
Yes, Miss Betsy Levinson I would think would be interested in doing a little story on the matter. So I don't think we have to worry about publicity. People will know about it. So just bear in mind that whatever number we do come up with, it's going to be publicized.
Yes, and I would also note that a rate hearing will require advanced legal notice in the paper. So you may have the general public tuning in live to participate during public comments,
Yeah,
and will be able to speak during the rate hearing.
right. And that may moderate our ambitions or not. All right, so what I'm hearing is upwards of 950,000 bucks is what I'm hearing from everybody. Is that correct? With somebody, so you want to propose something like that then? Remember, there's a perpetual care fee too. That's a third of it, right? So let's say if it's $930,000, then it's $310,000 perpetual care fee. All right. So how about proposing $930,000? Or am I being too conservative?
Are you looking for a motion and a figure?
Well, yeah, I think we are because we're going to propose. I don't know. I think we may need
I don't-
to do something.
I wouldn't take a vote on it necessarily. I think it's more of a discussion, and then I think do the rate hearing in a formal proposal to the committee, and then the committee will then take a vote during the rate hearing. I wouldn't necessarily, I want to get some clarification on that, but I wouldn't necessarily take a vote on that right now because we don't know how that will wash out.
Okay. I think that's good advice from our superintendent. So I think we're all in the ballpark, right? It's pretty high, close to $1 million, right? Do we anybody want to add that? We'll leave it at that and let Aaron just go ahead and now, Aaron, what will be required in your in the language that you use to announce the rate hearing?
So I'll do a little bit of homework to make sure. I'll probably talk to the town clerk's office to make sure that we get proper legal notice, and that I will look back to see the last time the committee did a rate hearing, if I can find the minutes, and see and use similar language to when the rates were last adjusted for the cemetery.
Now, the last time we did a rate hearing, it was to do with a more pedestrian necessity, you know, a regular grave or a regular cemetery plot, a regular cremation plot. And we had the old value, which whatever it was, and the proposed value. In this case, we don't have that. We don't have an old value. We don't even know what they charge for the Pope tomb. So
that's fine, because it's not we don't have a price for it currently. So we would just say we will propose 3 lots at upwards of $930,000 with a perpetual care fee of 1/3 of the final.
okay, so that's what the language would look like.
Something along those lines. So I'll prep some language, and I can run it by you ahead of the meeting too to make sure everything looks good. And
I think in the rate hearing language that got put in the paper, it just said there's going to be a rate hearing and there were no numbers, there were no figures in it. And then
Yeah,
the figures were brought to the committee as a proposed rate change.
yeah, in the rate hearings I've done in the past have been related to water and sewer, and I agree with this. The numbers are not posted. It's just a legal notice saying there will be a rate hearing, and then the department will give a proposal to the committee, and the committee will then vote on the proposal.
Okay. So the rate hearing, will that be, we could put that as D1 of our next meeting, or say we'll preface the, as soon as we've taken care of the administrative items, we're ready to go for the rate hearing. How will we do that?
Yeah, we'll do it as soon as possible. That way, if anybody tunes in, they're not, lingering, or if we do like a 10, we might do like a 4 p.m. meeting posting with like a 4:10 rate hearing. So we can get a couple administrative things in case anybody shows up late to the meeting, and then jump right to that from whatever item we're on, and then jump back to the rest of the agenda.
Now, Aaron, is the rate hearing advertised anywhere besides in the Concord Journal?
The Journal and Town Hall posting on the townhouse, and then on the town website.
Okay, so there are 3 areas where people can learn about it's going to take place.
Correct.
Okay.
It'll be 2 weeks. It'll be posted 2 weeks prior to the hearing.
Okay. So does anybody else have anything to say regarding going ahead and planning for this rate hearing? Do we need to vote on this? I don't think so. Okay. All right. I think we've covered the matter, and Thank you all, everyone for participating. I wasn't expecting to hear what I heard, and I appreciate everyone's participation. It was great, great. Hopefully we'll get a good, this will happen and we'll get a buyer. And we'll have some money to do some extra things. All right, so let's go to the next issue, which is record scanning. Aaron, if you could give us an update on that.
Absolutely. So we had met with a few different vendors that provided the record scanning services. So just kind of to recap, we're looking to digitize our cemetery records and put them in some type of a online cloud-based records management system that would be accessible to cemetery staff to manage the records, as well as a limited view to search public records. So if folks wanted to look up historic graves or any lot information for, let's say, relatives or anybody they'd like to search for that they know that is at Sleepy Hollow, they'll be able to do that from their own personal computer. So we decided to move forward with a company, Boston Computer Scanning, also known as Cemetery Find, is their online searchable database, and initiated a PO request that'll go up to the townhouse. So it's at, going through the chain right now to be approved. And once that's approved, we will begin working with them. They will come out to the site, scan in all of the records, digitize them, and then we will get those online and accessible.
Great, Aaron. Aaron, could you tell us the price that we're going with the Boston Computer Scanning if everything goes through?
It's $9,547.20.
Is that less than we were thinking we were going to have to pay?
Yes.
Can we, I think we talked, it could be up to 15 or more, right? Something like that?
We got a few different proposals. Some proposals were higher than that.
Yeah. So the extra money that we had appropriated for some of these projects, could some of that be slid over to the headstone restoration for next year?
It could. I have some other things in the future agenda items that I'm gonna that we were gonna need to spend some money on. So I don't think we'll have a lot of excess funding for this fiscal year, but yeah, I think the appropriation is coming out of the cemetery capital priority line item, which has $30,000 budgeted in it for FY20.
Right. So a little less than 10 will go to the record scanning.
Correct.
And we're looking about what for headstone restoration. Let's move on to the next one, just right because we're right there at it. The headstone restoration. Have we been in touch with our vendor about doing it again?
No, we have not. That one's just kind of on hold right now, just due to kind of seasonal needs that we have focused in other areas right now. But I think the plan is to get that. We have a long list of additional headstones that we want to restore, and we got to narrow those down a little bit and then reach back out to vendors. We'll solicit 3 vendors, similar to what we did last year.
And how much money have we appropriated to address that?
So $10,000 is what's in the budget currently.
So again, is there any way that we can slide a little bit of the money that we're saving on the record scanning over to the headstone thing for or while we have it, so to speak?
So we have what's budgeted in the cemetery budget this year is $30,000 for capital and then $10,000 for headstone restoration. So total 40,000. Like I said, just under 10,000 is going to be for the record scanning, earmarking the 10,000 for headstone restoration, and we have about $20,000 worth of forestry maintenance that we need to do.
Okay. All
So
right.
that's where the balance of funding is going to go to.
So
One.
So that means cutting trees that have fallen, that kind of thing?
Trees that need to be removed.
Okay. All right.
Trees that have already fallen. We did have that storm that took place in early October. Actually, it was the evening of our last cemetery committee meeting where we got cut off a little bit early. We had over 80 down tree calls throughout the town of Concord that we responded to, that night and the next day and the following day, and spent the next week cleaning up throughout town. A few of those were at the cemetery. Since then, we've identified a handful of trees that are in poor condition that were damaged. Some during that night, some had previous damage, some have just are in significant decline that we need to remove. And I brought in a tree contractor to give us a price on that. It's just south of $20,000.
All right. Okay, very good. When
And the money that was spent in the cemetery cleaning up and doing the other forestry maintenance was did not come out of the cemetery budget. It came out of a PO that was already open for town-wide forestry maintenance.
Okay. So when will we be in touch with vendors about the headstone restoration for come in the new year?
I would say it's November, between November and December. We'll get them lined up to start work in the spring.
Okay, great.
We have a number of projects right now we're kind of working on within highway and grounds. So
Okay.
with this this is more like a seasonally based project that we're kind of focusing on preparing for winter right now. And we'll kind of resume the headstone restoration one here. And we'll get it ready to go first thing this spring.
All right. Very good. Any comments on priorities from the rest of the committee? Okay, let's go to D5, the master plan continued discussion. Last time we actually sort of kind of identified two things that are potentially new priorities to supplant the priorities that, for example, record scanning and the mausoleum issue. They look like they're on the verge of being resolved and finished, and we want to put some new priorities in their places. And we talked about a couple of things. One was the forestry management plan, which Leo really sort of got us rolling with, and he was going to maybe talk to Aaron a little bit about that. And the other thing was building a columbarium in the new section. And Andrea and Jerry were going to, keep in touch with each other and see what they could find out about that. So let me touch first on the forestry management plan, see if either Leo or Aaron have anything to say about that.
Well, Paul, I did a little looking into what we can think about doing for replacements of the eastern hemlocks that have been, they're really under stress. And I every time I go over to the cemetery, I see further, deterioration. I don't think there's much we can do other than treat each tree, and I think that might be a bit expensive. So I think what I was interested in is what are other places doing as far as replacement for these eastern hemlocks. And so I see that the Arnold Arboretum did a research project, and they've come up with their replacements. And I've looked at some of the different states, like their transportation department reports and things like that. So there are replacements for the eastern hemlock, and we should probably start thinking about how we're going to do that, because I do see the trees coming down, and it's nothing new, actually. What I'm concerned with is that in the old part of the cemetery, when you see the trees that do come down, and you see you do a ring count on them, they're all, they're somewhere between 130 and 160 years old, so those old trees are at the end of their life by what I can see. So we should have some system to come up to replace those big trees that are coming down. And I talked to Tish, I think it was last week, and what I learned, this is real interesting, is if you look at some of the stumps that are in the older part of the cemetery, they're actually on a private lot. And so we can't go in and just put a new one in there. So much of the cemetery is owned by someone else. So where we do need to focus is on those parts that the town actually owns and doesn't have an immediate need to use. So that's one of the things. But I think we're seeing that the hemlocks definitely need to be replaced in a bunch of places. And then and also some of the older oaks. And then another thing I've noticed is across from my house, there is a very steep roadway. As soon as you get past Pickard's Gate off to the right, and I tell you, once a month, and during the summer, it's about once a week, I see a car just hung up on that. Ever since the big pines or the hemlocks have been taken down near the entrance. So there are certain places where we might want to, and that in particular, we might want to plant a fairly good sized tree right at the entrance to discourage people from trying to get up there, because if you look at it, there's damage all along the side of the road, on the side of the hill. There's tire marks are all over it. It's pretty much chewed up. So, you know, those are things I've been thinking about with the trees, is what we're going to replace certain species with, and how we're going to do it, and where we're going to put them.
Great. Aaron, you're also the town tree warden. Are Leo's suggestions something that you've had a chance to work on yourself?
Not necessarily those specific locations, but we did just complete our fall tree planting program, where we planted over 50 trees throughout the town of Concord last month. A number of those are in the cemetery, some in the newer section, some in the older section. And we're always looking for locations to plant trees and work on our urban forestry program. We utilize a tree keeper software that inventories all of our 27,000 public shade trees within the town of Concord, and also includes the trees that are in the cemetery and in parks as well. And a number of those, that system also has a number of vacant locations, which, you know, we have inventoried our locations where we're looking to plant trees. There's also an abundance of additional trees locations which we could look to plant in. So we're open to suggestions, always looking. We have more trees, and you know, right now we're lucky to have a grant from the state that allows us to plant all these trees. You know, moving forward in future years, it does cost quite a bit of money to plant trees. And like Leo is saying, the storms that are coming through that are causing the tree damage, it's no new thing. It is very expensive. And just some figures, you know, we spent over close to $40,000 on just contracted services the following day to clean up the town of Concord. That doesn't include the cost of the labor for my staff, or the cost of the equipment that we use. That is just contracted services that worked with our crews closely to clean up the roadways and parks and cemetery in the town of Concord. So, you know, we don't, you know, the town, you know, we increased the tree maintenance budget this year by some, not enough, in my opinion. And we also need to look at, you know, the cost of and what we're budgeting for tree replanting, which was unfortunately cut as part of the town's the budgeting process. You know, I had requested, I think, $40,000. That got cut to 25 initially at the townhouse level, and then was cut even further going into, you know, due to the COVID cuts. So, or COVID budget cuts. So, you know, if we want to commit to planting more trees and a reforestation of the cemetery, we need to really budget for it. The trees, you know, it costs right now. We have a contracted service that works with us to plant trees, and they charge right now $1,400 per tree installed. That's a 2.5 to 3 inch caliper tree. You know, if we were to purchase the trees ourselves, those trees are still, you know, $400 per tree, and then it's the time for in-house staff to plant the trees. So, and then, you know, we have to think about future maintenance ongoing. We water trees every week for the year to sometimes a year and a half after they are planted. And there's a cost associated with that as well, labor resources. And if we don't have the labor, then we have to contract it out. Otherwise, the trees will not survive. So if that's something that we want to make a commitment to on this, you know, within the cemetery, we need to make sure we're budgeting for it accordingly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that of the things we talked about last week, that was one of the things that stood out. And we were particularly, I think I particularly wanted to take advantage of Leo's knowledge and interest as a kind of asset that we don't want to leave aside. So, and Aaron,
I think it's great. I think the more support we can get to plant trees in the town, but also to maintain trees is very important. You know, we're looking at public safety, especially where the cemetery is such a focal point of the town and attracts so many visitors to the town, right? And visitors to the town not only benefit the cemetery, it benefits the local economy. Because when they're coming to the cemetery, they're shopping downtown, stopping at restaurants downtown. It kind of all works hand in hand. And we want to make sure it's a safe place as well. So,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of those, like Leo was saying, a lot of the trees are very old trees. Trees do not last forever. And, you know, having a strong forestry management plan is very important, not only just for the cemetery, but for the town.
yeah, yeah. So, you know, just like we have made the headstone restoration a priority, and it's kind of an ongoing priority, this is an area where I think we might, if we're going to talk about where we're going to allocate funds, this is like a very good place for this. I mean, I know the town has its own projects and you're very much involved with those, Aaron. That's not really our bailiwick. We share you with the town, but we're mostly interested in the cemetery. So I'm quite interested in seeing us develop a cemetery reforestation long-range plan and regularly budgeting enough money to make a difference to carry it out. But I wondered if anybody else would like to add to what I've said and what Leo has mentioned. Does it seem like a worthwhile? Go ahead, Jerry.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I think you know, if we're talking about the overall quality of the cemetery and the overall experience of the cemetery, not just in the context of history and visitors, but, you know, as a respectful place where we care for the dead and support the bereaved, that, you know, that is very much a part of it. So I think looking at it as, you know, a potential ongoing commitment makes perfect sense. I support it.
Right. All right. Well, I don't want to. I think we've pretty much drawn out the notion that it's a strong potential new priority for us to work on, and then we do have the Aaron's expertise and Leo's, which I think we should take advantage of. So we can return to this, but I think it would be good at some point to really consider coming up with a plan and a sizable allocation of funds to fund it.
We do have, like I mentioned, we do have the MVP grant currently in the town. We've used that to plant some trees in the cemetery, and we have additional funding to be able to plant more trees in the cemetery this coming spring. So I'd be happy to work with Leo to identify some locations and species that we would think are appropriate, and work with Tish as well to come up with a plan ahead of the springtime to get some more trees in the ground.
Okay. All right. At the very least, I think we could do is, just like Jerry, is to make it an ongoing agenda item, is it could get updates on how it's going. Jerry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask Leo, you know, you've got the iPhone, so I would love to see pictures as you've described kind of what you're encountering. I mean, I'd love to kind of share the view with you, and maybe this technology makes it a little easier. So
Yeah.
On your walks, please, love to see some pictures. That would be really
Yeah.
helpful.
Actually, I'm part of the American Chestnut Foundation, and what I have been doing this year is there's an application that allows you to take several pictures of a tree, and it gives its GPS coordinate. And what we're doing is inventorying the chestnut trees that are in back of the cemetery, you know, on cemetery property, but back by the swamps. And there's about 200 of them back there. Unfortunately, none of them reach reproductive age because of the chestnut blight. So it's really interesting to me that this loss of trees is nothing new. That cemetery at one time was filled with chestnuts, and they were huge, and they're all gone now. And then there's you know, elm trees. Elm trees everywhere in the cemetery at one time. Those are all gone. So you know, these types of diseases that wipe things out are nothing new. I think what we need to do is just prepare for some type of a succession plan. When you lose a big tree, what do you put in its place and where can you put it? That's what I'm kind of focused on.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, my battery's going low, so.
All right, we're gonna try to move on so we don't lose you.
Yeah.
Let's take the second thing that we talked about as a new priority is a columbarium. And Andrea and Jerry said they would look into that a bit. And I wondered if either of you have something you would like to say about it?
I also just wanted to mention that I had an email exchange with Kari Tari about subcommittees, and she said that technically you shouldn't have two people working on the same project. Even if we're just sharing our different information at the meeting. I did ask her to clarify that, but I haven't heard back. I imagine she's been a little busy this week, but so I do have information that I got the last time around when I went around with Tish and we were looking at columbarium and pricing, and even some monument companies who do that. But I just wanted to clarify that with her again to make sure we weren't in violation.
Right, right, okay. Okay, maybe we'll have to figure a different way of approaching it. Jerry, how about you? Did you want to share anything about the columbarium project?
No, I have nothing to share.
I think I sent you guys both what I had. Do I remember correctly? Did you get something from me? I had some information about that. I had done some research. Did you get
So
it?
what I also have what we collected the last time around when Tish and I had gone to those different cemeteries. And so I can provide examples for next time of like some pictures we took of the columbarium, especially at Newton Cemetery. It was very nicely done. And there's some information from monument companies that actually build them. So we kind of have a general idea, but if there was more specific questions too, I might even have that information from the last time we checked that out. So
yeah. Well, I was just thinking, go ahead. No.
I'm just not sure how far into it you wanted to get, or if the committee would be interested in starting to look at designs, and then, we could go from there.
Yeah, I guess it would just be helpful to know what it would cost to build one, what sort of rates we would charge for the niches. We already have some idea where it would go, the stairs to nowhere, as Tish has talked about. And I did think I sent you and Jerry information. I went back and forth with some gal in Calgary, Alberta, who they make them, and she had some contact in Lowell.
Yeah. And so, and the pricing can vary a lot too. And it seems, the pricing seems to be somewhat dependent on how fancy the design of the columbarium itself is. So if you even adding something like a fountain in the middle of it is very desirable.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of beautiful designs out there. And, it seems like cemeteries like Newton Cemetery charge you very different rates depending on where it's located and what amenities like fountains are with it, which seems kind of funny, but it's definitely an added, desired decoration to have. So.
Yeah. There's some beautiful ones. I think there was one done in Lowell that I had a YouTube video about, which I may have sent. Maybe I'll send it out to everybody. But I guess what we're just trying to figure out is if these are things that we want to make future priorities based on what we've got in our master plan. We've got one, a forestry management notion, and the second one is looking into building a columbarium. Is there anything else that people feel strongly would be a good potential new priority?
The only thing maybe I could think about is, and we'll talk a little bit of probably the next issue, but what about, more of our undeveloped land and coming up with a plan for the non-traditional walled in parts of the cemetery. So I'm talking about the trails and the swamp and the areas back there. It's a lovely space back there. And I was just wondering, do we need to do more planning, more ideas about what we want that space to look like? Are there trails that we want to make walking only? Are there trails that we want to be allowed for bicycles? Are there not trails that we want for bicycles? So I didn't know, looking back at the old minutes, there's usually not a lot of discussion about that space. And so, there seems to be a lot of change along that border coming. And so I didn't know if that was something that we wanted to undertake of just, developing some kind of plan, even if it's not touching anything, but, just having a plan for that space.
Yeah, we're going to touch on that. It's a good segue to the next point. Does anybody want to say anything about Brian's thought or any other priority potential?
I'd like to make a suggestion. That is that several of the stone walls in the cemetery have deteriorated, significantly. And I think we got to take a look at, repairing them or getting them replaced before they actually, fall apart. So I imagine that's a costly item, but it's nothing that would be new. Near Arthur's Ridge, one of the walls was replaced a few years ago. It came out pretty good, but there's several others that are pretty much in need of some attention.
Yeah, you're right. And we talked about that quite a while ago, actually, when Dan was superintendent. We just didn't have the time or the money. That was sort of coming up, but they're very expensive projects. But you're right. That's what, for example, if we did have sell a mausoleum plot, some
$1
of
million, yeah. Yeah, it's just I don't know. Tish might be able to talk about, but that one near Arthur's Ridge, Tish, by Verrill's lot, that was replaced, I think, 5 or 6 years ago. Was it an expensive project?
That was part of phase 1 of the roads project. It was included, and I don't know what the cost of it was.
But it was pretty much in need of being replaced.
It was, and it was a priority because so many people walk along it.
Yeah, and I think
It
the
gets
other
a lot
one,
of foot traffic.
right when you get to the flag pole that the Friends maintain the little garden underneath, that one off to the right is cracking and rocks are falling out of it. I think that one needs to be attended to fairly quickly, and the one across from it too. All of them around the Melvin Memorial look like they need some work because I see pieces falling out of them. I'm sure you do too. So I wonder if we should prioritize which ones of those need to be fixed the soonest, and then come up with some type of a plan on how to get the funding for it.
Yeah, that's how we did when we had to do the road repairs. We put together a package that included some cemetery funds and included Concord Preservation Act funds. And I think we even got a loan. We got a bond money from the town to pay for. It was a very expensive project, redoing all those roads. And some of that wall that's over there by Arthur's Ridge, they did a beautiful job with, as Tish is saying, and that was part of that project. We just didn't include a bunch of other walls, some of the ones that you're mentioning.
Yeah.
So I think that really is a project that we would require going actually to the town with an article, for the town meeting, and a proposal of how much money we would like to do, how much we think it would cost to do those walls. But we've done it before. It could be done again. It involves, it's a lot of work for Aaron too. He has to put together an article and all the information. But that's definitely something that needs to happen, in the next few years. So what we have here is 4 things we've touched on: a forestry management plan, the columbarium, undeveloped land plan that Brian has suggested. And Leo, you're reminding us of the need to rehab and rebuild some of these walls. So we've got 4 potential new priorities. And maybe we can revisit them again next time, just talk about if anybody has any new thoughts about it and figure out what sort of action we want to take to promote one of these or two of them.
I can tell you, I do get requests, and the funeral directors also get requests that they don't even bring to me for a columbarium. I probably have 6 or 7 people on a list that want to be a purchaser of a columbarium if we ever get one.
Yeah. So we've got really good notions, good things to work on. We just have to pick which ones we want to do and devote our energies to advancing them. I mean, Aaron and Tish and all of you, we only have so much time to do what we need to do in this area, but we ought to, husband our time carefully and decide where we want to put our efforts. So let's revisit these again next time, and maybe we can talk about which ones we want to push and find some way to do it. I don't know if we need to form a subcommittee or just ask one of our members to be the updater, so to speak.
How about if I take what information I got last time around and just, I'll just distill or put it in a readable form instead of my scribbles and send it to you guys. And then you can include it in the minutes next time about the columbarium. And then when I get clarification from Kari, I can just share that with Jerry. And that way, Jerry, if you and I want to split up a list of places with columbarium, to present some more detailed information. She was pretty clear about us. You can't really have 2 committee members working on the same project, even if it's somewhat independently, is what the gist I got from her. So I don't know if that sounds good to you guys.
That sounds great. That sounds great, Andrea. So we'll have to figure out how we can do what we need to do without stepping on the rules, violating the rules. Okay. I suppose we should go on to D6. Bicycle trail use update and draft letter from Brian. We had a little bit of a problem to work on last year regarding bikes and the trails, and we didn't get a whole lot resolved, but one thing it did do was remind us that this was going to be an ongoing issue. And out of it came the desire to let the other town committees that were sort of working on the same issue know that we are aware and have our own thoughts. And Brian had drafted a letter. I think he ran it by Andrea, and we have it. I think I sent it to everybody after Brian sent it to me, and I wanted to sort of run it by, let Brian say a word about the whole thing, and see if we need to send this letter to somebody or make some changes in it if we want to send it. Brian, you want to say anything about it?
Sure, thanks, Paul. Just, I think, the bicycle issue had kind of come up in our committee meetings, and, when you just look across town, I think, looking at minutes, there was over 8 different committees that had bike-related items on their agendas this last year. And a lot of that is going towards the reformatory branch, which borders, the cemetery property. And so there's a big drive to, I think, pave that. Bedford is spending about $6 million by 2022 to link it to bicycles. I know the Bruce Freeman Trail people are also trying to link it to bicycles to the reformatory branch trail as well. So with all the pressure coming to our door, we just thought that it was really probably a good idea just to reach out to the various committees and groups that are addressing bicycle issues in our town, just to, make them aware so that we can have a, common messaging across the town and across the committees with rules and regulations, rather than, one group having one communication and another group having another set of rules. So I think, I know we had kind of talked about a draft letter, and so I just wrote up something, and which I think you guys have, and happy to make edits and changes to it. But again, I think, the ultimate goal is just to reach out to the various committees so that Concord speaks with one voice when it comes to its rules and regulations, and hopefully that will help the cemetery deal with some of the concerns that it has with bicycle usage on its property.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian. Susan, you, at the end of last meeting, you actually shared something about what you have learned about. I think it may just be the same things that Brian's told us, but did you want to tell us anything that we might need to know?
I don't have any update. It was, and I haven't seen any movement. What I reported was that someone came to one of the co-chairs of Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Committee came to the Trails Committee to bring up the fact that Bedford is paving to the Concord town line, and that as a town, we'll need to make some decisions about the reformatory branch. At the same time, they mentioned that they wanted to have their charge expanded to include biking, but they haven't come to the select board for that. So I don't know if, that was the first time I'd heard that idea, and I don't know if they're just holding back on it, but there's been no movement to enlarge their charge. But Brian's right. I mean, it's an issue that comes up in a lot of committees, and I think his letter is so nicely done, and that outreach will get cemetery committee involved and have a voice in what happens.
No. Okay, thank you, Susan. And Brian, you thought that this could go to, is there such a thing as a transportation committee yet?
It is. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Oh, so they just recently started. I think back in September, they had their first meeting. I looked at the draft charter, which I believe has a public works member on it. And I just thought that, is that you, Aaron?
That's me.
Yeah, that's great. So, I just thought, rather than having to assign a committee member from the cemetery to, attend all those meetings, if we could share our concerns, and this is terrific that Aaron is the same person since he's been in these meetings as well, that, when there are discussions about bicycles or transportation routes in town that may impact the cemetery in any way, that there's a voice there to say, well, let's check with the cemetery committee to have them weigh in on their thoughts or concerns as we mold our regulations and rules.
Has everyone had a chance to look? Susan has. Have everyone had a chance to look over Brian's draft? What do you think about sending it out to, Brian, you wanted to send it to the chair of the Transportation Committee and maybe also to the Natural Resource Committee and to the Trails Committee?
Yeah, so the Trails Committee is a subcommittee of the Natural Resource Commission. Delia Kay sits on a lot of those different committees as a kind of she's kind of our Aaron for those committees. So I thought, kind of reaching out to her and also, potentially the Recreation Department, which sometimes has a lot of and maybe even, but I think primarily the Trails Committee, and then just the Natural Resource Committee, because they are the head committee for the Trails Committee.
And the Transportation Committee?
And the Transportation Committee, I'd send that as well.
So we're talking 3 or 4 different letters going out to these people?
Correct. Same letter, but just addressed to,
Right.
3 different organizations, just inviting them to talk with us, or, again, as their committees talk about these issues, to just be aware that the cemetery has a concern.
Any thoughts on this from anyone?
I have been asked to share from a lot owner who visits in this sector at the end of Chestnut Hollow, where one of the trails comes into the cemetery. There's one lot owner in particular that says that while he's visiting, the bikes are very disruptive. And we actually had a funeral there last week, unfortunately, and the people were seated in chairs at the funeral, and the funeral director had signs up saying funeral in progress. And some bikers came through. They never stopped. They just rode through and yelled, "What is this, a wedding?" And kept going. So the funeral director was pretty disturbed by that.
Wow, that's not good.
No.
So, any more thoughts or comments? Well, I think it is important that that we move ahead with. I think this is a good letter. Might not even be a bad anecdote to stick in it, Brian. The story that Tish has just told.
We do have, as an example, shouting that has disrupted burial ceremonies. I mean, so
Usually they're yelling to each other just because they're trying to communicate with each other, go left or something, you know, they'll yell directions. This was directed to the people sitting at the graveside funeral.
Yeah, well, that's very upsetting. And, you know, I don't know exactly what we can do, but I think that since we have this information, we need to really do something to discourage that kind of behavior. I'm not sure what we can do, but this is now the second time we've talked about this. This came up, I don't know when this was, about the same time last year, was it? When we had all this discussion about people arguing about the trails, and we had the guys from the bicycle lobby sort of show up and make their point of view. I think one of the fellows even said, well, what about rules about keeping cars out of the cemetery? And I realized it's not going to be easy arguing with these guys. Well, I think for starters, I'm willing to see this letter sent out to the appropriate people that Brian has mentioned. But what does everybody else think?
I thought it was really good. It really outlines our concerns and just reminds people that that is, you know, there's people who go there for funerals. So to be mindful of that and mindful of your behavior in the cemetery, I think it's just important to try to get the word out about that.
Mm-hmm.
I think some people don't realize that what they're seeing, that there are people actually being buried in the cemetery, that what you're seeing is grieving families at a funeral, and maybe some respect, you know, you can have some respect when you're coming upon that and just go a different way.
Yeah.
You know, you're on a bike, you can turn and go a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what can be done to stop that. There's always going to be bad actors, no matter how many rules you make. And I presume that most bicycle users are not that way. But it just takes a few to make it into a real bad thing. What do you think, Aaron, could be done to discourage that sort of thing?
I think, you know, I mean, we put up signs of communications. I think that there's some examples shown here just like blatant disrespect, and I don't know how you educate people on that. I mean, I think you coming up to a cemetery. I don't know if we put additional signage in the woods off of the Reformatory Branch Trail that say, you know, entering Sleepy Hollow Cemetery property. You know, please be respectful. Something along those lines to advise bicyclists. But like the example Tish gave, that's just, you know, I think it's blatant disrespect. And, you know, the other extreme examples we've heard are also of similar nature. So short of, you know, completely banning bicycles from the cemetery, I think it's tough to enforce, you know, people not talking or shouting or things of that nature. We just don't, I mean, you know, Public Works is not under enforcement. You know,
Right.
Enforcement officials necessarily, you know, other than, you know, having police there all the time. I think it's just an unfortunate situation that comes up from time to time, and we can discourage it with some signage. And then maybe we make these, you know, I think by sending a letter out to the bicycle, committee or some of these other committees, and kind of just put them on notice of some of the things that we're seeing, you know, educate those groups on some of the activities, and maybe they can try to police their own. You know, but I would hope that the folks that we're hearing about these situations are not, you know, the bicyclists that are part of those groups that pride themselves on being, you know, an organized group. I think those are maybe like I would hope those would be like the, you know, one-offs, but maybe we start with this, sending out the letter, letting them know we have an issue, it's ongoing, we're trying to address it, and almost like asking them for their help with addressing it amongst their their constituents and their members.
Okay. All right.
I think also maybe just, the messaging too at different places, so, with this letter, hopefully you talk to the Trails Committee, they're creating the maps, that to try and maybe put, a little key in there to please remember if you're, riding through the cemetery to be respectful. Perhaps signage at the visitor center, just reminding people that, Sleepy Hollow is an active burial ground, as it's a place where some people rent bikes to go for tours. And just as Aaron's saying, reaching out to the bike community, there is a bike organization in town. I forget the exact name, but I think it's bikeconcord.org or something like that. I mean, to the point, right? I mean, we'll never be able to control everybody and, these horrific acts, but, I think trying to do more community outreach is probably at least the easiest step that we could take as a group to try and address these issues.
Okay. Anyone else? Andrea, Leo, Jerry? All right. Well, I'd like to move that we accept Brian's draft and that we authorize it to be sent to these four, Brian, which is it? The Transportation Committee, the Trails Committee, the Rec Department, and this one individual, you say is sort of Aaron's, has sort of Aaron's responsibilities in those areas?
Oh, yeah, Delia Kay, who's kind of the interface for the Natural Resource Commission and the Trails Committee. She kind of handles that aspect of the town. All
right, and perhaps you could sign it, Brian, and say
okay.
for the cemetery committee, and then you can list all of us, and if it's including me with my title and Andrea with hers, but you can be writing. It's written and sent by you for us. How about that?
Okay, for the cemetery committee.
Mm-hmm. And then I think you can probably take it down to over to Aaron's office and put it on cemetery letterhead. Could that work out, Aaron? Yeah, and Justine can help with all that. And so we send something nice and official from us to them, saying we hope we can work together to sort of control these things. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you for drafting the letter, and let's hope that it has the desired effect. Any other thoughts on this? Okay. Let's go to D7, committee comments relative to anything we've talked about today. Anybody have any further thoughts on something that you forgot to mention earlier?
I had a question for Tish. She had talked a little bit back about Thomas Dugan getting a headstone. He was the guy who died during that battle. That was the movie Glory. And
George Dugan. Yeah.
Sorry.
Thomas's son.
Yes.
Yes.
God.
Yes. So I have found out from the government that a family member has to apply for it. So I've found a few. I've tried to call and they don't call me back, but I put a letter together just recently that I'm gonna try to send to a few and just reiterate that we're not looking for any money. We're not looking for anything. We're just looking for somebody to sign this form so that we can order this stone. Haven't really been pushing it because the people who want to do it and I want to have some kind of little ceremony there when we install it. And then we're also going to try to put a memorial stone for him down at Monument Square. And again, have a ceremony that we can't have right now. So hasn't been a big push to do it, but it's kind of like it was a rainy day project, which we didn't get much of this year. So the last rainy day I put the letter together and I'm hoping to send that out pretty soon to some different family members that I've stalked and found through Ancestry and other sites.
Cool. That sounded like a great project. So thanks for the update.
Yeah. Hopefully, when I have more to say, hopefully I have a signature within a couple months.
All right. Brian, I was wondering, adding to your letter, something along the lines of we would welcome any communication from you regarding bicycle use in the cemetery. Something like that. And then you could put your email and mine. How about that? All right. Anything else? Public comments. Susan, you don't want to tell us anything?
No, just thank you for all your work. I love this committee.
Oh, thank you for coming. I'm just so impressed that you sit through these things, you know? Thanks for coming. We really appreciate having you with us. So next time, this is summary of follow-up items. And next time, we're also going to plan to have this rate hearing, right? So that's one thing. I'd like to have a follow-up just as much as talking about the master plan update. So to see if we have anything more to add, if anyone has anything to say about any of these four things: the forestry management idea, the columbarium, the undeveloped land plan, and the stone wall rehab. Those are four things. Maybe we can see if anybody has anything to share further about them. I think that's the only follow-up that I can think of. And maybe if we hear if we get any feedback from the letter that Brian has drafted and is going to send, and if either Brian or I hear back from anybody, we can share about that. And I would say also, if anybody wants to have anything to say further about bicycle trail use, we could probably revisit that too, or at least think about it. Anything else that we might want to touch on when we meet again in December? Then I wish you all a very good Thanksgiving. We have a lot to be thankful for. And it's good to see you all. Have a good November. See you in December.
Take care.
Thanks.
Okay, Paul, thank you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
So we officially adjourn. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
All right, Jerry Susi moves we adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Who is that? Brian Davidson seconds it. All in favor? Andrea says aye. Leo says aye and is gone. Leo. Jerry says aye and is gone, and Brian too.
Aye.
All the best to all of you. Bye for now.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.